But mbona watu wamesota and yet tuna pesa mbaya sana. Each and every year budget yetu national expenditure inazidi ku increase. You know, when Kibaki took over in 2002, our national expenditure was at about 200 billion, give or take.
And now?
Proposed is 4.3 trillion. Excluding redemptions. Redemptions is the debt that we are supposed to pay. So that 4.3 trillion is excluding redemptions.
Excluding,
yes, excluding redemptions.
And most of which is recurrent expenditure, as opposed to anything developmental.
Yeah. Unfortunate bit, yeah.
So how could we as a nation be spending that much yet people's pockets
are empty
or licking?
I think if you look at what has happened the last 2 years, more so for the people in the formal employment, there's been the higher contributions that you've seen, affordable housing levy, the higher increase in the NSSF monies, and also the introduction of SHIF from what was previously NHIF. So find that even the disposable income as a result of these higher contributions has diminished the disposable income. So ndio watu wanasema ati money is coming through, or on the budget side the expenditure is growing, but the actual money that is getting to the pockets is quite low. So I mean, that's the dichotomy that we are seeing. Yes, on one hand the budget is increasing, but on the other hand people are not feeling this. And you find that even if you look at the budget, there are some of the expenses which are mandatory, things such as payment of public debt, be it the interest and the debt maturities. I mean, those are non-negotiable terms, non-negotiable budget items. We can't tweak them lower. We can't negotiate, okay, we reduce it, whatever amount that you want to reduce it. It's cast in stone that you have to pay the debt. And also some of them are the pension payments. So those are what we are included within the consolidated fund services, that the first charge. So whatever we get, we have to pay those first. And you find that because of the higher interest regime, over the last 2 years, the interest payments have been quite high. So it means that that has been the proximate cause of the higher budget expenditure year in, year out over the last couple of years.
And yet we keep borrowing. Tunaomba huko IMF.
Because of the fact that we have this 4.3 trillion in terms of, this is now the figures for the next financial year in terms of the expenditure. But if you look at the revenues that we can now be able to collect, this is now the tax revenues, this is also what you call the AIA. So appropriation in aid, this is now the internally generated revenue. For instance, the public universities, they have, say, parallel programs, so they are able to generate some monies. If you go to the national park, you pay some fees. So that goes as appropriation in aid, one reason or another. So if you add the tax revenues and the non-tax revenues, so the amount that they are able to get is way lower than this expenditure, the 4.3 trillion. So that means they have to borrow the excess, right about 831 billion for the next financial year. Unless now we say that, okay, going forward, our spending is limited to what we can now be able to generate from tax revenue and the non-tax revenue, we will never go to borrow. But in the event that our expenditure is higher than the monies that you can now generate, tax revenue and non-tax revenue.
Churchill, you must remember that you cannot tax a nation into prosperity.
Absolutely.
That can never work.
It can't. I mean, and that is the reality that we are also seeing. The target for the current financial year that is ending next month is, we are looking at around the tax ordinary revenue is around 2.58 trillion shillings. But then even the numbers you've seen from July last year to March this year, we are way below the target. I mean, we are not gonna hit that 2.58 trillion.
Most of the time the taxman never hits. They always project, but they never hit those collections. And you know what the problem is? Because the low income earners can never easily evade tax, but the multinationals, the big companies, most of whom actually are supposed to pay huge taxes, are the ones who don't do this
and get away with it.
And sometimes it works. They work together with agents of government to evade that. We know there is a tax avoidance, but evasion is the big thing.
Yeah.
And the government knows that, yet nothing is being done.
I mean, they've been trying to net some of those revenues that they have not been able to meet from the multinational companies. There are normally these kind of exemptions or some incentives that is given to them on the tax side, at least to be able to lure them into the country. But at some point, I mean, those have been counterproductive, at least for the multinational companies. So even you reading of any finance bill, you find that there is one or two tax proposals that are being introduced to be able to bring them back within the tax bracket. But then again, you find that, as you said earlier, I mean, you can't be able to collect, say, 100 billion year in, year out from these multinationals. So you may actually, you might even end up chasing them away. So there's that, it's a tight balancing act that even the government needs to do or has been doing, engaging with them. But to your point, I mean, these are some of the things that you are seeing now gradually being implemented within the finance bills.
And another thing is, some economists suggested that we widen the tax bracket. Because how many people are paying taxes in Kenya? I think, what, 5% or 5%?
Yeah.
For formal employees is around 3 million.
Yeah.
This is now within the formal
Setup.
Yes.
setup, yeah.
3 million.
Yeah, 3 million. But then we have other 15 million Kenyans within the informal sector. So that segment hasn't been really captured. So widening the tax bracket, those are some of the things that the government has been trying to implement, but has been problematic, like taxing the borders. It's quite how do you even go about it? Because
they are normally taxed because the consumables,
yes, consumption goods, yes.
Yeah,
it's hard to tax them, direct taxes, the income taxes, but now on the consumption, as they go to shop, the VAT that they pay. So,
which is a more like a certain way of ensuring that you keep taxing them instead of double taxing. So already they've been taxed through VAT, through some other levies when they use fuel and everything of that sort. But then again, that's not enough for you as a government. You now want to say what you put in your pocket, we also want a portion of that. Okay?
Yeah.
But
quite unfair.
Yeah, the problem most people say is not that Kenyans don't want to pay taxes, is that Kenyans don't feel the benefit from the taxes they pay. Like, yes, there is revenue collection, yet whenever it pours for 15 minutes, the city is locked. We can't go about our business.
Everywhere.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
Wear and tear on vehicles and motorbikes and everything, and you go to the hospitals and there's no medicine and stuff like that. So I don't think Kenya has always had a problem of revenue collection. Is that even the revenue that's collected is never used appropriately? What's your take?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a genuine concern that we have seen. The services is not commensurate with the taxes that Kenyans are paying. So, I mean, that's a legitimate concern. How to work about it? I mean, it's because you find that there are different levels of, there's the national government and also there's the county government. You find that some of these services are provided by the county government, whereas the taxes is now collected primarily by the national government. So there's that the breakdown division of what the national government does and what the county government is able to do. The concern that also we are hearing from the counties is also that there's this something called equitable revenue share, equitable revenue share to counties, that there has been a delay in remitting some of these monies from the national government to the counties and to be able to provide some of the services. But even that notwithstanding, there's the wastage that is there. Both levels of the government, with the national government and the county's government, that also hinders the service delivery. So I think that's something that is the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed to be able to ensure that even the compliance it grows organically.
Yeah. But how are we going to be able to come out of this situation? Because we are normally taught in even the basic of, let's say, economic classes that you should never live beyond your means, right?
No,
and that's from an individual's point of view.
Do.
But as a nation, we are way beyond our means. Is this something that can be reversed? Is there a time? Will there ever come a time when we will be using a huge chunk of our revenue towards development projects and improving the situation of the economy as opposed to a recurrent expenditure?
I think if you look at the Public Finance Management Act, there's Section 15, which now stipulates like over the medium term, the level of development expenditure is a certain level. I think 30% thereabout.
Yeah.
But now, to me, I find that there's some ambiguity because this PFM Act was passed in 2012 thereabout, and it speaks of over the medium term. You see, it hasn't been cast in stone that what is this over the medium term? Is it by 2025 or when? So over the medium term at this vintage point speaks to 2028. And when it comes to 2028, we'll still be talking about over the medium term. So it's my personal take is probably we need to anchor it in law that, okay, say by now we're in May 2025, say by May 2027, for instance, development expenditure needs to be a certain limit, and that is cast in stone. And then we start measuring the development expenditure as a percentage, at least to meet this threshold. But having said that, you find that what now takes us to tied to this point is now the borrowing. Because you find that some of the borrowing that we are taking is now to have these big ticket expenditure items. For instance, let's take a step back 10 years ago, the SGR project. Imagine that we want to do the SGR, leave alone the viability of that, but imagine that as a country we want to do SGR at this point, and even right now we're at the talks of extending it from Naivasha all the way to Malaba. In any given point, you find that we may not even have the necessary resources to be able to extend it to Malaba, for instance. So that means they just borrow the full amount and then develop it, and then after that we have to repay it. So it makes sense to build it in a short period of time, and then after that they can now be able to, it's easier to do that as opposed to, okay, this year we just bill for 10% of it. It will take us like 10 years. So that's where the rationale of borrowing, at least the large scale expenditure items, comes in.
Yeah.
That is one thing. The other thing now boils down to the viability of some of those projects. You find that from a National Treasury perspective, they said that the return on investment at the bare minimum should be 10%. So that means that if we take a loan of, say, 300 billion Kenya shillings, for instance, it means that we need to generate in any given year 30 billion. That's at the bare minimum return on investment, 10%. But that is not the case if you look at some of these projects.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah, so
in fact, these projects don't come to completion.
No.
Most of them.
They're called white elephants.
Yeah. Most of them, yeah. The big ticket projects, those ones come to fruition, but now you find that the small or the medium scale projects, because of either some contracts or some issues, probably some compensation of land, it becomes problematic. So at some point they become stall projects. There was a report a couple of years back that highlighted some of these stall projects, and those are the things that builds onto what we call the pending bills or the domestic arrears. Contractors not being paid, suppliers to the projects not being sorted out. That amount is around 540 billion as of December last year, and
half a trillion.
Half a trillion yet.
Yeah.
before these projects are actually commissioned. See, there's feasibility studies that are done. So they cannot say that because of those compensations and everything, they don't come to fruition. It's intentionally meant to stall or fail so that people can eat. The headlines today said it's our turn to eat, because kuna feasibility studies inafanyika and everything is done. Hiyo 10% wanasema on an annual basis return on investment, wanasema it's doable. So itakuwaje midway the project wasa wanasema ati now it looks like we beat more than we can chew. Sindio?
Absolutely.
And some of these projects are repetitive projects, the dams and everything of that. They're never meant to take off. And I think that's where we go wrong. And we are big on projects like the SGR, for instance, eco-functional. But are we going to break even on a project of such magnitude by ferrying individuals, passengers, as opposed to cargo?
The numbers are out there. It's not gonna break even, and the cost is coming to the loan that you took 2014 to 2017 to build it. There was a grace period, and now we have to pay it all the way till 2034. Unless I'm mistaken, 2034 is when the final payment of SGR is due, and then after that is now the build, operate, and transfer after a couple of years thereafter. But as it is,
by the way, what was that called?
321 billion, give or take,
yes,
for the SGR, and that is from Mombasa to Nairobi.
To Nairobi, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, each and every time we find that there's what you call the government now bailing it out, the payment from to SGR is now partly sorted from the government exchequer, because of the fact that, as you've clearly pointed out, it's relying heavily on passenger traffic as opposed to cargo traffic, and even the cargo traffic is kind of one way, because we
only have stuff coming from Mombasa
here.
to,
we don't have stuff going
the
other way. So I mean, it's that's the unfortunate bit about
will the Malaba path, will that help, like goods from Uganda?
It's gonna be goods from overseas finding their way to Uganda, but we don't have anything like one-way traffic, man. Ni kama mrembo yeye ni kufyonza tu, anakunyonya tu pesa yako, like you are not benefiting from anything. Ulagia.
You're quite figurative.
Amazing. But going forward, do we have any other projects of such magnitude that are meant to help us actually skyrocket, economically speaking, to the next level? Because Vision 2030, as it was being mooted when Kibaki, I think, took over, we thought it's going to be too far and we are going to be able, but we are just 5 years away. But hizo projects inafanyika apart from LAPSET.
JKIA.
Yeah.
JKA, there's is it the expansion of JKA? This one I think it will be under PPP, public-private partnership. Probably it could be them, but so long as it's done in a transparent manner, probably it could be them. I don't have the details, because the issue, even what came out last year, was these things. I mean, the way it was done, it was outside the PPP, transparency. So as long as it's transparent, and some of this, the way it was initially, it was muted as a private initiative investment proposal. But which was outside the PPP, the kind of, because you can't imagine somebody, an outsider, coming up with a private initiative investment proposal. Obviously, if it's a PPP, the structures has to be there. So probably we need to see that being done, at least to be able to, because PPP is the way out. Imagine expansion of JKA cost is around $2 billion. I mean, that if you borrow that money, I mean, it will have some fiscal cost implications. But if you go the PPP route, however, if it's transparent, I mean, that's the better way to go. There's also this dual carriage between Nairobi all the way to Mau Summit, I think also to Eldoret and to Malaba also. There's another one that was announced last year, the one from Nairobi to Mombasa, the dual carriageway. I think there's Americans doing it here. So those ones are, at least if they are told, there could be some viability of sorts. I haven't seen any of those feasibility papers, but I mean that's the better way out as opposed to now getting recourse to loans. Yeah.
Tell me something, Jojo. What's our debt ceiling right now?
The way it is, there was a law that was passed in 2023, which now put it as a debt anchor. So debt anchor acts like it's like we need by October 2028 we have to be 55% of GDP. So that level of debt, whatever it will be, so as a percentage of GDP, it has to be at least 55%, but in present value terms. Okay, let me speak in English. So
Thank you.
yes, we're speaking in English, but now
let's speak layman.
Yes.
Layman, yes.
Yeah.
So you find that for a country such as Kenya, there are what we call some of the debt indicators. So based on there's a number that we have, so it takes us to be a middle income in terms of those debt. So based on that, our thresholds for debt has to be, debt to GDP has to be 55%. If it's a strong country, it's around 70%. If it's a weak country, it's 35%. But the level of Kenya in terms of the debt carrying capacity is 55% of GDP. So, and then in present value terms, so you find that some of the debt that we take as a country, more so from the external side, is normally given in grants. So there's some grants, so we don't pay that level of debt that we pay, the grant portion of that. So you exclude that, and then you look at, okay, this as of December 2024, the level of debt was around 10.9 trillion.
You see that?
And then
Almost
you look
11 trillion.
as a percentage of GDP, you're looking at a number of 68%, thereabout 68%. But now, in present value terms, it's like 63%.
So we're still far from 55.
So this 63% as of December 2024, we have to reach 55% by October 2028. 55% plus or minus. So there's like a ceiling plus or minus.
But we always
5%.
we shoot
Way over.
through
Way
the
over.
ceiling. Always.
I remember when it was like 5-6
Trillion. Yeah.
Now we're at almost
11
Yeah,
trillion.
we've had some tweaks. Initially, the PFM Act had it at 50% of GDP, which is similar to the what we call the convergence within the East African community, that all the countries have to ensure that their level of debt is 50% as we converge to have a single monetary union and sorts. So that was the threshold under PFM Act initially. And then it was changed to 7 trillion. I think it was December 2019. Then back again, and then they took it to 11 trillion. Now we are talking about the debt anchor, 55% of GDP in present value terms. Let's see how it will be able to rate, because now 63%. So you have like, we need to shave 8 percentage point of that by October 28. Yeah.
Tell me, our GDP,
Yes.
what is it?
It's around, this should be around 16 trillion. We still haven't gotten the numbers for the fourth quarter of last year, so this is between October to December, but sometime this month we'll be able to get those numbers. There's normally the economic survey, which is typically released in the month of May, so we shall now be able to get the numbers for the whole of last year, but should be around 15-16 trillion about.
Banks are no longer lending to customers. They're investing in government paper, treasury bills and bonds.
It was coming from the point whereby you look at how the macroeconomic environment is. It's been rough the last couple of years, and then interest rates had gone high. The central bank rate was touched a high of 13%. So 13%, that is like the bare minimum. Before now, banks come up with their markup. So you could find that even people were borrowing at 20%. So even from a risk management perspective, so banks shied away from lending to the risky borrowers.
Wakaenda kwa
government. Because even government at that point were issuing interest rates highs of 18% last year. So it was a no-brainer, if I may put it that way. Not that I'm holding fort for banks, but it kind of made sense for them now.
But can we? Those are banks.
Banks, yes.
But are banks alone going to spur economic growth in this country, or we are supposed to empower?
It's the
ordinary
real
wananchi?
economy.
Yeah.
The real economy is the one that drives growth. I mean, banks are now intermediaries. They are catalyzers. If you want to expand your business, you go to your bank. Irrespective of what kind of how we label them, at least they're the best place to go and get additional capital. Unlike the Shylocks, you get some extremely crazy rates from the Shylocks that are out there. So banks, they have a role to play to midwife the economy, the economic growth economy. So I was talking about the
types of debts.
Treasury bills, weekly basis, 24 billion on a weekly basis, and we have treasury bonds on a monthly basis. Even you and me, we can be able to invest in treasury bonds.
True.
So it looks like an investment, but it's a debt to the government, but it's an investment to me and you. Okay, I'm coming from that because I work within the financial services sector. And then we look at now the external debt. External debt, we have also similarly, we have the commercial loans, because treasury bills and treasury bonds are commercial terms. Because of the high interest rates that were there then, the kind of return was even high a year ago. But right now, say treasury bills were 16% thereabout. Even as back as 9 months ago, October, is it 9 months? Yeah, October. About right now, we're talking about less than 10% because of the fact that the central bank rate has also been lowered. So even in tandem, treasury bills has come lower. So those are commercial terms. On the external, we also have the euro bonds and the syndicated loan. Eurobond now basically is a bond. You go like a treasury bonds, but it's offered in a different jurisdiction other than Kenya. We also have what you call syndicated loans, so banks coming together and issuing loans to the government. So those ones are issued in commercial terms. We have now the bilateral loans, Kama is China, so Kenya to China or Kenya to different countries. But largely now we have China is the largest bilateral lender to Kenya. 2/3 of the bilateral debt is held by Chinese debt.
And we just got another 100B the other day, right?
Yeah, design. But malio ganji tena ndio hatujui.
Investments, walisema ni my investments, ama less mistaken, ama mimi sema.
Hizi investments zinafaa kusaidia Kenya at large, lakini zinasaidia few individuals.
Yes. Yeah, so you find that now on the commercial loans, the Eurobonds and the syndicated loans, unapewa chapa, but there's no like whatever you do with it, I just want my return. So you don't even specify. Bilateral, most of them are now project finance. So there's a particular project that is being financed by a foreign government. For instance, now with the Chinese kind of debt, those are project finance. But then we go to the Bretton Woods, the IMF and the World Bank. Largely, previously World Bank used to be also project finance, but also now they are getting into budget support. So they also give GAVA some monies, but there's some conditions that needs to be met. Same with the IMF. With the IMF, we also had, it's like we enter what you call a program with the IMF. Like the previous one started in 2021 all the way to 20